Hi, this is Dr. Robert Panetta, Director of Pharmaceutical Solutions with Block RX. Welcome to our Ask the Expert series, where pharma supply chain experts share their views on the most pressing challenges facing the industry, how blockchain can help, and the impact a viable blockchain solution might have on their business, as well as patient outcomes.
I'm a partner at the law firm of Ross and Shulga. We are a securities law boutique. We have been in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space for a while now, about 3 years, which in this world is a long time. In the cryptocurrency world, it's a while, and it's been really exciting. And we're happy to be in it. And thanks so much for having me on the program, Robert.
So, what, in your view, are some of the biggest legal blind spots for blockchain companies today? Now, whether they're conducting ICOs or otherwise.
Yeah, so I'll give a couple of them. The one thing that jumps out to me is the prevalence of all these bounty programs. And the bounty programs, they're kind of just accepted by all the companies that are conducting ICOs, and it seems to be routine. And there's platforms actually where bounty that actually list all the bounties available. For those of you who are listening to this and aren't aware of what a bounty program is, so a bounty program, it's like um, a rewards program for promoting an ICO. So people can either debug a platform and help out with that. I think that's how bounties originally came about. Folks said, hey, we'll give you some of our cryptocurrency tokens, our digital assets, if you help us debug the platform. So that way you don't have to pay for an auditor or whatever to do it. You can just give people some tokens. And it's kind of like evolved into more of a promotional thing where people are getting tokens for tweeting and making Facebook posts and the like and kind of boosting it. And it raises some securities law concerns. They're considered stock promoters if the tokens are considered securities, which more and more are these days. And there are certain regulatory issues with that. With the tokens that people are getting, does that fall under a certain exemption? It's likely that it does not. So the whole bounty program thing, I see that as kind of ripe for regulatory action in the near future, and it might take a lot of people by surprise. But the SEC sort of mentioned it in their latest um, cease and desist order in Munchie, which was, I guess, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of the next wave of, or not wave, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some order focusing on bounty programs in the near future or some sort of guidance from the SEC. And I also, the second thing is a little bit more of a larger picture thing. So many of these companies are in, in progress of building their platform or their idea that's going to take advantage of blockchain technology. Some of them have nothing more than a white paper, but they have really brilliant people behind them, like Filecoin, really smart and kind of have the background to carry out what they want to do. But I think too many people see the whole legal part of it as just connected with the ICO. And after they get through with the ICO, and hopefully they've had a successful one and they've raised money, enough money to carry out their project, but hopefully not enough money like Tezos where everything's going to fall apart because people get greedy. Um, I see it as they kind of say, okay, now the legal part is over with. Now we have all this money. Now we're going to go about building our company. But really, the legal part should continue. It sort of changes, but as people go about building their company with using the blockchain, there needs to be a compliance regime set up. Compliance regime of policies and procedures, some sort of internal audit procedure, something like that, because all of a sudden you have all this money and you need to go ahead and build a company. And building a company, it's important to keep strong compliance and audit controls. And in this field, you don't really know what's next. You don't know what regulators are going to do, what actions they're going to take. And the companies with a strong compliance program from the very beginning, of the kind of expedite process of building the company, I think they're gonna be in the best shape to withstand any sort of regulatory action. And at this point, we don't really know what the regulatory action would be, but the ones with strong policies and procedures that they're following are just going to be in a lot better position.
Speaking of regulators and regulations, where do you think, or do you think that this field does require a new regulatory framework for token-enabled economies to work?
What exists isn't good enough. We're in many ways the regulators are moving in the right direction and they're thinking about it They're thinking about it in a careful way, which is good, at least at the federal level. In New York, my firm is located in New York. Our clients are all over it, but they had something called a bit license. And I think that the bit license was a good faith attempt to kind of come up with what New York considered sensible regulations. The New York Department of Financial that regulatory body, they were used to regulating Goldman Sachs and all these investment banks that are located in New York, and they could kind of do whatever they wanted to, and the banks would go along. And then so they came out with this idea of this bit license that said you had to have this bit license. It's a regulatory process. You go through it. It takes a little while. It's pretty expensive. If you're doing anything with virtual currency, if you're in any kind of business, then you need this New York bit license. And what they didn't realize was that in this, with cryptocurrency and blockchain, you can easily cut out New York. So all of a sudden, people just cut out New York. So it wound up kind of backfiring. So now there's only 3 or 4 people who even have a bit license. So that's an example of kind of maybe the bit license wasn't as thought through as it should have been. So at least at the federal level, people are taking their time. And I know PCAOB, the accounting board that was established by it was either Sarbanes-Oxley or Dodd-Frank, I forget which one. I think Sarbanes-Oxley. They have been talking seriously about what audit procedures are ideal for blockchain technology. So as far as I know, they haven't released anything yet, but they've been talking about it in conferences and the like. And so I expect to see something coming from them, because I see that as an issue. Like, what's the auditing procedures going to be like if things are on the blockchain? So how would you go back and audit things? So I think it's going to be something unique than just kind of using the standard audit. Also, in the securities field, which is kind of where I roam, this whole idea of secondary market trading has just been such a tough situation. Everybody wants these tokens to be on a secondary market. In the secondary market, the value of the tokens going up and down like stocks just raises all sort of issues. So there needs to be more clarity on that. There hasn't really been, there are all these exchanges, but they're not really licensed, or they're trying to, or they're saying that all their tokens that none of the tokens on there are security tokens, which is often questionable. They don't, none of them have any kind of stamp of approval from any securities regulators. Overstock has talked about having what's called an alternative trading system, ATS, but it's not in fruition yet. It's still in plan. So the secondary market trading, there has to be more clarity around that, and I expect that to happen in 2018, probably late this year. So I don't see it as something that's going to be solved in the next couple of weeks, but I think there's going to be greater clarity later this year.
Okay, that's great. Yes, because we noticed exchanges do tend to avoid legal questions.
Yeah, and oftentimes, they start trading. Some of our clients say that they never talk to the exchange, and all of a sudden their token is trading on it. So it just gets into and sometimes it's kind of a marketing thing with the exchange. They want to be seen as they're on the cutting edge and they have all these tokens, so they don't bother asking the company for any information.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. I guess going into the next question, laws are very district specific, and blockchain is effectively a borderless technology. So how do you think this borderlessness and the law can interact together? Could you have, for blockchain innovation, would it be better if there was a clear international regulatory path?
Yeah, it's kind of the whole blockchain thing. It's kind of wild how international it is. There are people in Holland and Russia and stuff that are at the forefront of smart contract auditing. People are just all over the world with this, and continually on conference calls with people just all over the world. It's kind of it's sort of an exciting field. I think right now, in some kind of international body or regulatory regime would probably do more harm than good. I think it'll be better to let kind of things run wild for a little while. There's going to be more innovation and the like, and like the SEC, blockchain and cryptocurrency had been around a while, and they didn't release their first guidance until July, until towards the end of July. So they took a while. They took their time to think about it, and then so there was all that time where people could do ICOs and the like. And I think here is kind of the same thing. I still see it as too early to adopt any kind of international regulatory. And let's be honest, it'd be hard to come up with some sort of international body that has teeth the best that can really be hoped for is some kind of international standard, um, like um, like with the accounting boards in Basel one, two, and three, all that. Maybe we could have something like that. I just see it as a little early now. Though with all these blockchain conferences, it seems every nine almost, or at least every week, there's some blockchain conference in Gibraltar or Geneva or just all over the world. And so I think eventually people are going to get together, and they're already kind of talking about it. So I think eventually people are going to get together and release some sort of guidance. But in terms of a guidance that people follow, I think it's just a little early right now. I'd like to see kind of the wildness continue for a little while.
And lastly, is probably the broadest question, but how do you think blockchain technology could change or impact the legal profession?
I don't see it influencing the legal profession that much. People ask me all the time about smart contracts, but right now smart contracts are really just best for sort of if the money hits this account, then this cart of apples is released from the warehouse. Um, they call that a smart contract. I call it an automated blockchain transaction. I think that encapsulates what's really going on more than a smart contract. What goes into a contract is all these reps and warranties, all these things about what if goes wrong, what if the apples are rotten or whatnot, what's the governing law, if something's wrong, what court are you going to be in, or is it going to be arbitration? There's just force majeure provisions, indemnification. It just goes on and on. So right now, what we have in smart contracts, we have sort of the automated thing like I was talking about. Money hits the account and then the cart of apples goes out. But then you have a contract going along with that. So you don't really, when people talk about a smart contract, there are the kind of big time companies that are using smart contracts. They have a contract that goes along with that. And, there's far more to a contract than just if this happens, then B happens. That's one section of, what could be a 20-section contract or even more. So I don't see it as in kind of jeopardizing attorneys or anything like that, or even influencing it that bad, that dramatically. I do see law schools, and I'm an adjunct at a local school, and a lot of times there'll be coding in the law and the like. So there are people who are going to be able to specialize in it. But in terms of like an overall picture or like affecting the number of cases that go to a courthouse, I think that's pretty far away. And as you probably know, Robert, these smart contracts, they suffer from something called the oracle problem, where at some point you need a live human that looks into that cart of apples and says, yeah, these are what we're looking for. And that can be built into smart contracts, but I don't see, I guess I just don't see the smart contracts and the like really changing the legal profession that much. One of my friends that I know from kind of the crowdfunding sphere and this blockchain sphere has developed a kind of a smart contract arbitration system. So maybe something like that would be, that's kind of interesting, and maybe there's going to be more on that, on kind of like how to fix smart contracts or how to fix something that goes wrong. Perhaps there's going to need to be lawyers more familiar with it, because inevitably, even having a smart contract with someone, anyone can sue anyone. And so if I use like kind of the money hits the account and then the cart of apples goes out, if I get rotten apples, I'm going to sue whether there's a smart contract or not. Even if I've signed something that says I'm not going to sue, you can still sue. Doesn't mean you're going to win, but you can still sue. But maybe there's going to have to be lawyers who are a little bit more familiar with smart contracts, and they can kind of explain what went wrong, or why the person shouldn't recover, or why the person should recover. So maybe, I guess at the end of the day, maybe some attorneys are going to find it useful to their career to be more familiar with blockchain and smart contracts and the like, but I don't see any kind of wholesale change. And I think these classes that are being offered in law schools on kind of coding and the law and the like are just going to remain kind of on the fringes, and will be, yet another of dozens of electives that students can choose.
Okay, great. Okay, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I guess my final thought is it remains a really exciting field to be in. So I think we haven't really unlocked the potential for blockchain. There's a lot of use cases being thrown about, music industry and the like, and a lot of people thinking that it's really going to change the world, and maybe it will 50 years from now. I think the best use cases are have to do with things like supply chain. For diamond mining and the like, the best uses are where there's some sort of public interest in this information being in some immutable place where you don't really have the public concerns of other fields. Diamond mining, we want to know that if it's from a mine in Congo, that a warlord isn't chopping off kids' arms and the like. And you want to see a clear path. Blockchain is good for that. Voting, we certainly don't want to know how people voted, but a certain precinct machine, a certain voting machine, we could see how many people voted for this candidate and that candidate, and then having something on the blockchain there instead of people just having to scribble things and then pass it along. There's a good use case for that. So it's going to be exciting and interesting just to see how the technology evolves and getting more and more kind of real use cases instead of all these fanciful things that we're getting now.
Right. And of course, the pharma supply chain as well.
Oh, of course. And I know you all are being on the leading edge, and I'm happy to be, I guess I can disclose that you all are a client, and really happy to be on the forefront there of pharma with you all.
Thanks for listening to our Ask the Expert series. The information and views contained in this recording are not necessarily those of BlockRx, nor of the companies at which our experts are currently employed. This has been a production of BlockRx.